Hello, I'm Kimberly Parnell, and you are listening to Engaging Texas Families, a podcast from the Parent and Family Engagement Statewide Initiative of Texas. Let's jump into today's episode. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Engaging Texas Families. I'm Kimberly Parnell, your host, and today we're joined by Todd White. This is a special episode being recorded at the 2025 Parent and Family Engagement Conference in Waco, Texas. Todd is currently the superintendent at Mathis ISD. Todd, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
So let's start off. Tell us a little bit about yourself, about your family, and kind of your journey in education.
Gosh, I think I've been in education a little while. So I think I first started teaching in Colorado in a very small school, very rural, six-man football, and met my wife, who is from Texas, and that's how I ended up in Texas. I've been in a few places as a teacher when I first came to Texas, and then I was recruited to be an administrator, and I thought I never would be an administrator because I love teaching, but somehow found my way into that process in the Austin area. We moved from Colorado to Austin because Austin was the most non-Texas Texas town in Texas. And started there and then got into admin, ended up going in my first principalship down by Corpus where I'm at now, and then was recruited to go to East Texas as a principal, served in a couple different campuses there, turning around campuses, and then went to be an assistant superintendent up in Perryton, and then from there to another small school district as a superintendent in Santa Ana, a huge town. I had 270 students, pre-K through 12.
Huge town in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, so it was an amazing town with lots of good people, so it was a good experience. And then from there, I had a conversation with my wife, and I'm like, I think I have one move left in me, and so I want to be down by the coast, but not necessarily right on the coast. So I'm about 45 minutes from setting my lawn chair up on the beach.
Perfect. So I got to ask you, what's better, Texas or Colorado?
Depends. That gets very picky if you're talking about barbecue or whether we're talking about weather or,
Yeah.
It's a little bit different. I like everything. So my family's still with me. I've got 4 kids. One just graduated this last spring as a valedictorian and off to college, so now I've got 3 left in the school. So I got a sophomore, a 7th grader, and a 5th grader.
You have everything, and a partridge in a pear tree.
Yeah, so they're on 3 different campuses.
Wow. Wow. Well, you serve a valuable role on our Parent and Family Engagement Statewide Council. I think your insight and wisdom on that is something that we appreciate and people benefit from all over our state. So thank you for that. I just want to say thanks for that. So going back to Mathis ISD, what is your vision for parent and family engagement in the district?
Oh, gosh. Vision is such a... I can tell you that the overall vision, we want to be a world-class campus, a world-class district where everybody goes to see how things are done right. So when we go through that process, we went straight into developing a long-range strategic plan, and we brought in about 400 stakeholders. We had students, we had staff, we had parents, we had our mayor, all sorts of different people from the community came together to kind of come up with a direction, and one of those committees was parent and family engagement. So for me, it's an area of passion. I've been pushing the envelope on this one for a little bit, just trying to get more parents engaged in what's going on with their children so that they are better equipped to support, to ask questions, and honestly to have their voices heard as a stakeholder in our district. I think that's critical because a lot of times you'll have a place where they make all the decisions at the top without really engaging a lot of the people that are living in the community and really know, okay, here's our history, here's where we've been, here's where we want to go, and in that process and just trying to help grow that parent engagement through events, through activities, through support. We build a lot of different layers depending on what it is, but one of the key components is engaging our parents and families and community in how to engage with your voice, how to be heard, how to be involved. So a lot of the directions and steps that are in our strategic plan for the next 5 years, a lot of those ideas started and came from parents, and even students have some great ideas. And so they get to see those things start to come into place, and they're like, oh, they really are listening. And now you're growing as a true partnership. So for me, the parent engagement process is all about developing a true partnership where we're working together for the betterment of all kids.
So on that note, beyond just tracking attendance at an event, how does your district measure the impact of family engagement?
I think there's a lot of components. I think where I'm at in Mathis, I've been there a little less than a year, so we're really getting started in year one of the process. But having implemented this through the full course, it's more than just attendance. What we have, you use those events to bring and showcase kids so the parents are there, and then when the parents are there, then you have an engaging activity for them. We do a lot of feedback loops and participating, providing feedback on like our strategic plan and projects, what they think, what needs to happen. We've done some on cafeteria food and stuff like that with kids and their parents, and so you get very different ideas there. But I think just the whole process of getting everybody going in the same direction, where you can utilize your events to allow their voice to be heard. So I don't know, it's not quite cheating, but it's really gaming the system that you know what it takes to bring everybody in. In the presentation I talk about that I do. It used to be the mindset was, well, if you feed them, they'll come, and that's not necessarily true at all. And that would imply that the only thing they care about is food, and that's not true at all. They care about their kids. So we showcase kids, brings in parents, and then we engage the parents while they're there. When I did that process in Santa Ana, by year 3, we then had our parent group, our parent organization. That was the agenda was co-developed with the parents, and then the parent would lead, and we didn't necessarily have a president. What we had was the next month someone else led the agenda, so we kind of took turns, so it never became a power struggle, and avoided that. But what we really wanted and had there was a group of parents that acted as liaisons. A lot of the larger districts, they have paid parent liaisons. In fact, probably the largest group of people that are here at this conference are parent liaisons. So in a smaller district, you don't have those luxuries. I think as a superintendent, I was administration. I didn't have, it was it. I was curriculum, I was safety, a little bit of that. So, just engaging your parents in that whole process and allowing them to have that voice. Now they're starting to think. I gave them like a couple rules. I said, this organization will never do fundraising. You don't need to pay for a computer for the library, and we're just going to be here to help other parents. That's our main goal. And so that's how that became. We're not there yet in Mathis. We're in kind of, when I got there, they said, well, we can do year 1 and year 2 at the same time. I'm like, okay. They're right. We're doing the first year and the second year. So we now have a parent and family university. So I think we've had 3 events, and we've already had 1,000 different family members come to our events. And it's not just attendance, it's engaging in that. One of the things we did was a survey on the first one. The next one, we're going to do some feedback sessions with parents while the kids are doing all the activities. So we use those as the way to bring parents in, and then we support them while they're there.
I love that. So you have kind of a unique role as a superintendent on the Parent and Family Engagement Council, statewide council. So what would you say to the superintendent who's like, maybe a little hesitant about, does parent and family engagement really work? What would you say to them?
I think we did studies on that. When I was in Santa Ana, I calculated out, and actually did. Dr. Mapp kind of said, well, she talked a lot about data to support, so I calculated out, star scores for every kid. And I also tracked every parent that showed up for any engagement. So I could easily show that those kids that had their parents show up had a higher scoring, in academics. And it was at every level. And it was very consistent. So, I mean, parent and family engagement, it's one of those things a lot of people have said, it's not part of teacher training. And I know that's something that we've talked about trying to grow. But it's the same thing true in admin. I think a lot of folks would think that it's someone else's job to do the parent engagement. Like when I got to Mathis, it was the 21st Century Grant, the ACE after school program. They're like, oh, they do. I'm like, oh, no, we all are going to do it together. And it's kind of another side story, I guess. I get off topic every now and then. But when I first went to Mathis and I was doing the tour and meeting everybody, it was my day one, right? And I come around the corner and they're introducing me to all sorts of people, and I'm visiting all the campuses, and I visit the 21st Century Grant program, the ACE program, after school program, and they tell me who this is, and she's like, oh, I met you before, and I'm thinking I met her maybe earlier in the day when we were doing, some of the tours, and she's like, no, I was at your session when we did the state conference in Corpus, so I know what we're going to do here, and I'm excited that you're here, because I know the direction that we're going, because I attended your session, so I know what's next. So they're here, and I now have a parent on the and he brought his wife as a parent, so we have a team of 5, so it's kind of nice. If I'm talking to other district leaders, I think you can't do it without your parents. I think, I do a lot of work with how to do strategic planning with districts similarly, and it's all involving your stakeholders and making sure that your stakeholders, have a true and honest voice in what we say, and that as a leader, we have to listen to those voices and weigh those in with all of the decisions that we make, because I think you can get a lot of really good feedback from parents. You can get some bad feedback too, but
absolutely, you can get all kinds of feedback.
But yeah, I think trying to do that, and it's just like coaching our new teachers, making sure they have some strategies that they understand how important it is to stay in communication and be transparent with what's going on with your families.
Right. I think the relationship piece is something we talk about all the time, but that relationship, just building that relationship with your parents is so, so important. So you've kind of had every level of leadership within a district, from a teacher to now a superintendent. And I think you understand the value of the value that every stakeholder plays.
Absolutely.
And the value of building the relationship at every single level. So let's take a different perspective. So from a parental standpoint, what are 2 or 3 actionable steps that parents could take right now to effectively partner with their child's school?
Communication. Reach out and ask, hey, what do we need to do? How can I help? Because a lot of times we have people that want to volunteer, but there's not necessarily the opportunity that it's not put out there publicly. Here's how you volunteer. Here's what we need. So I think the more that you can engage in your activities of your kids, that's going to help out a ton. They see you there supporting whatever they're doing, whether it's the art show or a band concert or, any kind of a competition, or even, parent-teacher night, just being there and knowing that you're a part of their world. Those kids have a tendency to perform a little bit higher. So find a way to engage, and sometimes you got to push.
Right. You
got to push the leaders to say, hey, you need to work with your families and make sure that happens.
I love that. I think, we ultimately we want our kids to be academically successful, but I think there's also a social and emotional part that there's also a value of engaging with our parents for our kids to be successful socially and emotionally. So I just want you to take a second as we close. What is something either you've seen a teacher do, or maybe a school professional has done for one of your own kids that just impacted you in a positive way?
I think that's a great question, because I've got 4 kids and they're not even remotely similar. Mm-hmm. They're so different. So, For some, it's giving them the opportunity to try. My oldest did a little bit of everything. She did every sport. She did show of pigs. UIL Academics was a band in the doing that. Was in the UIL One Act Play. I mean, anything that could be done, that was that one. And then I've got a son who's in special education, and some of the things that educators that have done for him, I think is even more so valuable. Just in the truth, the ones that have done the greatest have taken the time to build a relationship. And so they get to know the kids, they get to know families, and when you start building those relationships, those things last forever. I still have, from when my first teaching job was, I don't know, like 35 years ago, I still stay in communication with those kids. Like one of my kids I coached as a freshman, I think he's coming up on 400 victories as a basketball coach. Wow. And has won like a couple state titles. And it's kind of funny because you're like, I still think of him as, little Randy, and now he's not.
Right.
But I mean, when you build those relationships, those last forever. They really do. I stay in touch with a lot of people that I've worked with. So I think networking becomes really powerful. On the council, I know it's kind of interesting because I was like the smallest district. So when we're talking about advising TEA, we'd talk about a concept, and a lot of policy is built around the larger districts. But sometimes smaller districts have a harder time. Like, how does this impact you? Well, if a larger district has all these different people that can be assigned to a task. At smaller districts, it's the same guy doing the same thing.
Right. So
they're like, how does the new security thing impact you? Well, I guess I'm now doing safety and security.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you wear a lot of different hats.
So I think a lot of times when we have a lot of those dialogues, it's like, okay, Todd, how does this impact the small schools? And Maddie's really good too, because she's in Gruber. So I think that's two people that really have a good grasp of how it's very different with the moving parts on how policy impacts, different school districts.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate you serving on the council and what you do for families and kids across our state. And I know that you'll continue making a difference. So we will see you again on another episode of Engaging Texas Families.
All right. Thanks for inviting me.
You're welcome.